France is a unitary state and follows a semi-presidential system and identifies as a constitutional republic. The current president is François Hollande. He has been in office since 2012 and is a member of the Socialist Party.
France has been under a state of emergency since November 13, 2015, after 3 suicide bombers struck near the Stade de France, and then were followed by more suicide bombings and mass shootings at cafes, restaurants, and a concert hall in Paris.
We are now truly facing an unknown and historic situation in Paris.
Police are just storming a concert hall. We don't know the exact number. It could be 100, more, less, being held hostage.
The show was about to end, and suddenly we heard gunshots coming behind us.
What I can see right now is a few emergency response units, firemen going in the building and trying to rescue and evacuate a few of the hostages that were trapped.
I was eating at a restaurant with a friend of mine. All of a sudden we heard huge gunshots and lots of glass coming through the window.
When I looked back, I saw at least 2 men, unmasked men. Maybe there were 3, and they were firing randomly.
You see people on the ground wounded, what appears to be a lady there with her leg up in the air trying to get some treatment.
We were inside the stadium, and approximately half an hour after the beginning of the game, we heard 2 big explosions.
France's president was inside the soccer stadium where explosions broke up the game.
This is a terrible hardship.
It was a bloodbath, and they shot at us, and they reloaded the guns several times, multiple times.
It sounded like there would be more than one, and it also sounded as if they'd stopped to reload, and then they reloaded again, and then more gunshots fired the second time around.
Thankfully, I have seen about 100 to 150 hostages, civilian people being evacuated.
My sister, my girlfriend, my parents, my grandparents asking me if I was okay. So I didn't know what was going on, and they told me that there had been attacks all over Paris, including explosions in near the stadium. So I understood that something big was going on.
We expect that there may be a lot of dead people tonight in Paris.
This is an attack not just on Paris, it's an attack not just on the people of France, but this is an attack on all of humanity and the universal values that we share.
7 of the attackers were killed, but they had already killed 130 people and wounded 368. These attacks, perpetrated by the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, were in retaliation for French airstrikes on ISIL targets in Syria and Iraq. These are the deadliest violence to strike France since World War II. Because of the severity of these attacks, chaos and unrest have been spread throughout the country, causing the government to declare a state of emergency.
France is in a state of emergency. It's the first time since 2005 that the government has taken such drastic measures within its own borders. Prior to that, we'd have to go back to 1984 when an emergency law was imposed by Paris on the French overseas territory of New Caledonia. But what does it actually mean for those living or visiting France? To start with, extra security has been deployed onto the streets of the Paris region. Authorities can arrest suspects of what is deemed dangerous behaviour, seize weapons and carry out searches. Public places can be shut, curfews can be imposed and restrictions of traffic and people are permitted. All borders were immediately closed following the attacks, and controls have been put in place effectively suspending the Schengen Agreement in France. French law permits the government to impose a state of emergency for 12 days. In order to extend it, a law needs to be approved by Parliament.
Since the events of that day, the vast majority of France's current events have been related to the attacks and their effect on the country, if they aren't about the attacks themselves. The resulting xenophobia and Islamophobia are something that unfortunately do change the country and affect certain groups of people in it.
For example, more attention has been brought to the refugees in France after 2 suspected accomplices were found hiding out in a refugee camp. However, President Hollande announced that France will be accepting 30,000 Syrian refugees over the next 2 years, while the United States is expected to accept about 20,000. Hollande also stated that he will invest $53.3 million to provide housing for the refugees, causing France to be one of the most welcoming countries to the refugees, and has one of the largest migrant camps, the Jungle, located in Calais, France.
A trial regarding a police brutality case from 2012 was just held, in which French policeman Damien Saboudjian shot and killed convicted robber and French-Moroccan Hamid Bentounsi as Bentounsi fled from the police. The policeman had argued that he acted under self-defense and that he had had no choice but to shoot the perpetrator because he had stolen. The general lawyer opposed this argument and required that the policeman spend 5 years imprisoned and be permanently banned from practicing police work, but he was acquitted on the grounds of voluntary violence causing death without intent to kill.
Authorities were quick to react when a preschool teacher reported a fabricated story about being attacked by a member of ISIS in his classroom in the Paris suburb of Aubervilliers. Claiming that the attackers said that this was a warning to the government, investigators discovered that the man had stabbed himself with a pair of scissors and made up the story in hopes of being transferred to a different school.
The political party, the National Front, is gaining footing and seems to be widely supported in France as a far-right anti-immigration group. The recent attacks have made the people afraid of letting strangers in, which has made them start to believe that the National Front is the right way to go. Supporters of this party are also using the fear that is spawned from the terrorist attacks to advocate for stricter immigration laws and letting less refugees in.
François Hollande is preparing to tighten security laws and extend the state of emergency to 3 months due to the severity of the situation. Countries around the world are showing gestures of international support towards France during this time of turmoil.